Hi, years 9 and 10. So it's video 5, might be Friday if you're doing a little bit of this every day, ready to just hand all this in on Friday. It's the first question 5 that I've given you all of this half term. So there's a new set of skills that we need to have a look at. But please don't worry, because actually the majority of the skills are just the skills we've been using. The how does the writer skills, choose your individual pieces of evidence, have a look at those, explore those, is always going to get you a great mark in this exam, I promise you. If you're aiming for those higher grades, then the extra layer that you need on question 5 is that you're going to build an argument from the evidence that you look at. But the exam board make it quite easy for you, to be honest. If you have a look at the question with me, read section 5. One reader commented, "It's clear that the stepfather was a bad man from the beginning of the extract. How far do you agree with this reader? You should consider the presentation of the stepfather in section 5, how the stepfather is presented in the passage as a whole." So it's unusual in as much as there's something to respond to. They have made up a reader who has commented, but that comment is a really strong comment. It really comes down on one side of the fence, so to speak. This reader believes that this stepdad was a bad man. So, given that we've had a look at sections 1 to 4 and we've seen some of the limitations that this stepfather has, we can already see that we're going to be able to say, yes, I agree, for a certain number of reasons. We might also, if we want to push our grade forward, we might also say, actually, is that completely true, or is there some space in that comment that doesn't account for the fact that, you know what, he works, he provides a wage, he looks after the children overnight while mum's on the night shift. So there's some yeses, but also we might also say some no's. How far do I agree? Well, I agree maybe 80%, and the other 20%, I don't agree. I don't have to say to the examiner, oh, 50% I agree. Forget that, that's math stuff. You just have to recognise that you could wholly agree, and that's what lots and lots of you will do. If your target grade is up to grade 5, then you can just agree with the statement and go and find the evidence that supports it. If you are interested in a higher grade, you might say, right, well, here's 4 pieces of evidence that support this, but actually I think we're being unfair and this is why. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. The other thing to watch for is we've been told that we have to look at section 5, and it would be really easy to go and look at section 5 and think, well, my job's done then, isn't it? The truth is we have to look at the passage as a whole, otherwise we are going to limit our marks, because the bullet point says have a look at section 5 and look at the passage as a whole. So don't be really brilliantly clever in section 5 and then just not make any reference to the rest, because it doesn't matter how clever you are, if you miss a bullet point out in a reading exam, you're not reading properly, are you? Okay, let's have a look then. As we always do, we're going to divide it up into some reading time and some writing time. Okay, I'm going to start you off. I'm going to start you off in 2 ways. I'm going to start you off with something from section 5 that I can argue with. But really all I'm doing is what I've done all along. I'm just going to go and find evidence that's about this man. And then once I've looked at the evidence, I'm going to decide, does that support the statement or is it working against the statement? And the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to consider the passage as a whole, and just from what I recall and remember, I'm just going to look for 1 or 2 pieces of other evidence there. Okay, so let's look at section 5 to start with. He had gone through a whole other family, wife and babies, before he ran into our mother. Now, There's something about that language, isn't there? It's not he had a whole other family, a wife and children before he met our mother. There's some giveaways in the language. He had gone through, as if he's kind of ripped through them, consumed them, rinsed the fun out of them, and then thought, "Oof, this is boring now. I'm off." That suggests to me not a nice man. So that particular piece of evidence suggests to me that I can support what that other reader said. Okay, and I'm going to tell the examiner why. I am not just going to say he had gone through a whole other family, suggests he is a bad man, and therefore I agree with the reader. Because I've missed out where my reasoning was, and the skills marked here is build the argument, convince me. So the way to convince is to specifically look at those words gone through. The phrase gone through a whole other family suggests that he had consumed the joy from that family, and once it had become difficult, he had left that family. He had shirked his responsibilities or hadn't fulfilled his responsibilities. Okay. Something else, the next one along, before he ran into our mother. Notice how the writer doesn't say before he met our mother. Ran into feels more violent, more accidental, doesn't it? Oh, here's another woman that, you know, will cook and clean for me. Fantastic. And do I love her? Well, does it really matter? She's going to cook and clean for me. So there's something there about him not being a particularly nice man, isn't there? Ran into, I'm going to really look at that language. There's a sense of violence about it, a sense of accident, that he isn't choosing people in terms of love and honour and responsibility. It's just a happenstance. Happenstance meaning that, you know, it's just kind of any kind of accident. Anyone would have done it. It happened to be the mother, could have been some other woman. Okay. He doesn't seem in charge of his own life, does he? Right, so there's 2 from section 5. In a moment you're going to look for some more in section 5. It might be that you're disagreeing. I don't know. That's going to be very much your personal opinion on what you think men should do in terms of responsibility to their families. Okay. There's some pretty nasty stuff in there though. You'll notice, like the broken noses. So there's been violence, he's had affairs, he's been a drinker. So there's lots and lots of stuff in there. But what I said I'd do is I'd just kind of cast my eye over the passage as a whole as well for you guys. So passage as a whole, I recall that he certainly let the pregnant mum put the big heavy pictures up on her own. That wasn't very gentlemanly, was it? I remember forming that impression of him the first time round. So that would maybe help me from elsewhere. Again, just casting my eye over this, that he at times had tried to amuse the children, had tried to bring some fun into their life. Do you remember he brought those mojos, scattered them all over the floor? It was like, you know, Eid or Christmas, that plentiful time of year. So that's not a bad thing to do, is it? That's actually like a redeeming feature of him, that at some point he has tried to form a family and to try and form some moments of joy in these children's lives. Okay, so let's imagine then that considering those couple of things has taken a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes to start building the argument, to start finding the evidence. So that's going to give you, I'm going to give you guys another 5 minutes max. If you can do it in 3, fantastic. If you can do it in 4, fantastic. But I'm going to time 5 minutes now while you're getting on with that. Okay, I am going to be having a look at section 5 myself, and also some of the other bits that I recall as well. Now is a good time, if you've got a printout, to swap to a highlighter, because you've got underlinings. some of those underlinings might be really useful here. So your eye's going to be drawn to checking those to start with. And if you want to use one, if you highlight over it now, you know it's for question 5. Okay, and you don't have to go back through all your underlinings as you're writing up. Okay, 5 minutes, off you go. Okay, don't forget you're doing the passage as a whole. Go and have a look back at some of the things you'd already underlined about him. I have realised that we missed a chunk out of question 3. We missed 2 paragraphs just because there was a page break on my and obviously following this your extract. So hopefully you've already got 10 pieces of evidence. If not, it might be good to just go and say something about the father at the end of that for question 3. Sorry about that, that's my fault. But it does contain something interesting about Peter Hawkins that actually helps you argue against that idea that he's a bad man from the start. You've got another 2 minutes. One minute. 20 seconds. Okay, so just finishing up. Right, so I'm going to let you be a bit more independent on this. I'm just going to pick out a little bit about the quotations that I found, but I'm not going to make the judgments for you. You can make the judgments. You're still going to use the same pattern. The description, she knew nothing about any ex-wives of babies to feed, suggests that, suggests something about him, doesn't it? That he'd done something that none of us admire. You need to name what that is. Broken noses is another piece. Broken noses and what that implies is different to affairs and what that implies. So chop this up. Don't put it into one. Broken noses, affairs, drained whiskey bottles. They are three separate problematic things about this man. Treat them as such. And I think they all fall into the category of suggesting that, you know, if we don't want to condemn him as bad, he's certainly got some things he needs to work on, hasn't he? Okay, if you've looked elsewhere then, I mean, obviously there's lots from elsewhere, some that I've mentioned, but one of the bits we missed out yesterday, he smacked our cheeks with kisses, comes just before section 4. Suggests that he's affectionate and can be loving, doesn't it? I wasn't going to tell you that, but I have done. So that's like a counter argument, isn't it? And again, just present it as, go straight into the quote, he smacked our cheeks with kisses, suggests he can be affectionate, can be loving. Right, okay, so you have got plenty there. Now, do not, when you write it up, fall into the trap of just saying, here's the quotation, it suggests he's a bad man. Here's the quotation, it suggests he's a bad man. Or here's the quotation, it suggests he's not a bad man. The truth is, you probably only need to say whether you believe him to be a bad man or a damaged man once or twice. I've got a dog limping in. Just give the particular evidence. Okay. You know, come on, you can entertain my boys and girls. Look, there you are. Hey. So, just follow the pattern in whatever little increments you want to get through year 10. Right, so let's say that you spent 5 minutes on that because it was a little section 5, and then you'd already found the evidence from elsewhere. So a good 10 minutes to write that one up. What you could end with or start with is the statement. Overall, I think that on the whole, the man is bad from the start. However, he does have some redeeming features. For example, he can be affectionate at times. So that will give a nice overview and an answer to the question. Or put that at the end, in between individual pieces of language following our pattern. Make sure that you do that right up in 10 minutes, 10 pieces of evidence, and you are done for the week. The only thing that you need to do, cut and paste it all onto the end of the piece so that you can teach, you can mark it, Google Classroom, and then Lola says, really well done. Bye guys.